Imagine this. You see the same sunrise every morning, drink the same coffee, and go through the same routine. It's nice, it's comfortable, but it's also expected. Now, what happens when one day the sunrise doesn't come, or the coffee shop you love suddenly closes? You notice, you don't just notice, you feel it. Something that was once there is now missing, and that absence creates a void. That void demands answers. And that's exactly what happens when you apply the NoContactRule correctly. The human brain is wired to react to loss. When something disappears, especially something familiar, our subconscious mind goes into overdrive, searching for it. This is because of what psychologists call object permanence. The understanding that something still exists, even when it's out of sight. But when we don't have access to that thing, our curiosity kicks in. We start wondering, where did it go? Why isn't it here? That's how absence plants a seed in the mind. And that seed grows into longing. Now apply this to relationships. When you were always available, always texting first, always initiating plans, always being predictable, you became a part of their routine. And routines don't spark desire. Predictability doesn't create excitement. It creates comfort, and comfort breeds complacency. But the moment you step away, the moment you remove yourself from the equation, you introduce a powerful psychological shift. Uncertainty. Uncertainty is the key to making someone think about you constantly. It's what keeps us hooked on books, TV shows, and even social media. The unknown triggers the imagination. It forces the mind to fill in the blanks. And in the absence of answers, the brain creates its own story. When you go no contact, you're not just removing yourself physically, you're creating mental space for your presence to grow stronger in their mind. It's the paradox of absence. The less you are there, the more they think about you. Every unanswered message, every unviewed story, every moment of silence becomes an open loop in their brain that demands closure. Think about it. How often do you obsess over the things you don't understand? The song you can't remember, the movie ending that left you hanging, the text you expected but never received. That tension, that craving for resolution is what makes no contact so powerful. Here's where it gets even deeper. The human mind does not like unresolved tension. It needs closure. And if it doesn't get it, it keeps revisiting the last place it found emotional significance. That's why people replay past conversations, reread old texts, and stalk social media. Their subconscious is trying to close a loop that you left open. And guess what? That loop doesn't close unless you break no contact. That means every day you stay silent is another day you live rent-free in their mind. Every moment they expect you to reach out but don't hear from you, the craving intensifies. Now, you might be thinking, what if they just move on? What if they forget about me? But here's the truth. People don't forget impact. They forget things that were easy to get, or things that felt ordinary, but they don't forget things that made them feel something deep, something real. And the moment you pull away, you're no longer part of their routine. You become a question they can't answer. And questions demand attention. When someone is left wondering, why did they stop reaching out? Why aren't they chasing me? It doesn't just cross their mind once and disappear. It repeats, it lingers, it grows. And the more they think about why you're not there, the more they feel your absence. It's important to understand that this isn't about playing games or manipulation. This is about understanding psychology and self-worth. The reality is, most people only appreciate something after it's gone. They don't realize its value when it's readily available. That's just how the mind works. Think about the last time you lost something valuable. A ring, a favorite piece of clothing, an old letter. You probably didn't think much about it when it was there, but the moment it was gone, That's when you realized just how much it meant to you. That's when you started searching, retracing your steps, obsessing over where you left it. Now, replace that lost object with you. When you disappear from someone's life, you become that lost treasure. They may not have noticed every little thing you did for them while you were around, but once you're gone, they feel it. They feel the silence where your words used to be. They feel the emptiness where your presence once filled space. They feel the contrast between a world with you, and contrast is everything. People don't miss things that are always available. They don't crave what they know they can have at any moment. But take it away and suddenly its value skyrockets. Absence creates demand. It shifts their perspective. It forces them to look at you in a new light, not as someone who was always there, but as someone they might lose forever. And that's when their mind starts working against them. They'll try to convince themselves they don't care. They'll tell themselves they're fine. But the more they fight the thoughts of you, the stronger those thoughts become. It's like trying not to think of a pink elephant. The harder you try to push it away, the more it sticks in your mind. This is why no contact isn't just about going silent. It's about creating presence through absence. It's about giving someone the space to realize what life feels like without you, to let their own mind remind them of your worth. Because at the end of the day, we don't chase what's easy. We don't crave what's always there. We crave what we fear losing. And if you can master that understanding, you'll never have to wonder whether or not you're on their mind. Because you will be, constantly. The no contact rule isn't just about the other person. It's about you. It's about stepping into a position of strength, regaining control, and transforming yourself into someone who doesn't just attract attention, but commands it effortlessly. When you cut off contact, you aren't just creating space for them to miss you. You're creating space for yourself to grow, to heal, and to elevate. Most people think of no contact as a waiting game, a painful period of silence where they suffer in the hopes that the other person will come running back. That's the wrong mindset. This isn't about waiting, it's about evolving. The person who enters no contact should not be the same person who emerges from it. And that shift is what makes no contact so powerful. It forces emotional reset, personal reinvention, and self-mastery. When you've been emotionally invested in someone, it's easy to lose yourself. Maybe you made them a priority above everything else. Maybe your mood depended on their texts, their responses, their level of engagement. Without even realizing it, you started reacting instead of leading. And that's what no contact exposes. It reveals how much power you had unknowingly handed over. See, when you're emotionally attached, your brain is flooded with dopamine and oxytocin, the same chemicals that create addiction. It's why you feel withdrawal when they stop responding. It's why you constantly check your phone hoping for a message. Your mind is searching for that next hit of validation, and when it doesn't come, you spiral. This is where self-mastery comes in. You have to break the addiction. You have to detox from the emotional roller coaster. The first few days of no contact, they're the hardest because your brain is still wired to seek that person's presence. But the longer you hold the line, the more your inner strength grows. You start shifting from a place of emotional. Think about this. If you can't control your own emotions, how can you expect to influence someone else's? If your mind is constantly stuck on what they're thinking, what they're doing, when they'll come back, then you're not in control. They are. And that's the exact energy that pushes people away. Desperation repels. Confidence attracts. No contact gives you the opportunity to rewire your brain. Instead of seeking validation externally, you start finding it within. Instead of waiting for a text to feel good, you start creating your own sense of fulfillment. And this shift is felt by the people around you, even by the person you're distancing from. Energy doesn't lie. When you're in a state of lack, when you're constantly thinking, I hope they miss me, I hope they notice me, that energy seeps into everything you do. But when you shift into a state of abundance, when you start focusing on your life, your growth, your happiness, that's when everything changes. This is the core of self-mastery. You stop reacting emotionally to external circumstances. You start creating internal validation instead of seeking it from others. You build a presence that naturally draws people in rather than chasing them. And the best part, the moment you start focusing on your self-improvement, that's the moment they start feeling your absence the most. Because here's the truth. People can sense when they no longer have a hold over you. They can feel when you've shifted from emotional attachment to emotional control. And that's when they start wondering, wait, what's changed? No contact isn't just about cutting them off. It's about creating distance between who you were and who you are becoming. The more you evolve, the more the dynamic shifts. You stop being the person waiting, the person hoping, the person needing validation, and you become the person they can't stop thinking about. This is the paradox of detachment. The less you need someone, the more they feel pulled toward you. It's basic human psychology. Scarcity creates value. And nothing is more scarce than someone who was once deeply invested but now seems to be moving forward effortlessly. But here's the catch. You can't fake it. You can't just act like you've moved on while secretly obsessing over them. That energy will be transparent. True self-mastery comes from actually doing the work. It comes from redirecting your focus, from investing in yourself so deeply that whether or not they come back isn't even the point anymore. Think about how many times people only start chasing after someone once they've truly let go. Why does that happen? Because when you fully detach, when you shift your energy inward, you radiate a confidence that's magnetic. You no longer seek, you attract. This is the ultimate emotional reset. Instead of feeling like you're in a losing position, you realize that no contact is actually a gift. It's your chance to break free from old emotional patterns. It's your opportunity to elevate beyond the version of yourself that was overly attached, overly reactive, overly consumed by someone else's presence. You shift from needing validation, creating validation, seeking attention, becoming attention, reacting emotionally, leading with strength. And when you reach that level, you don't even have to ask if they're thinking about you. You know they are. Because the shift is so powerful, so undeniable, that they feel it without you having to say a word. This is what self-mastery does. It puts you in the driver's seat. It stops you from being emotionally swayed by someone else's actions. It turns no contact from a passive waiting game into an active transformation. And transformation is the most powerful force of all. When someone senses that you are no longer the same person, when they realize that you've grown, evolved, and stepped into your power, they don't just notice it, they feel it. Curiosity is one of the most powerful psychological forces in human nature. It's what compels people to open a book and keep reading, to binge watch a TV series late into the night, to stay fixated on a mystery until they have an answer. And when it comes to relationships, curiosity is everything. Think about this. Why do people obsess over cliffhangers? Why do unsolved mysteries stay in our minds long after we've heard about them? It's because the brain hates unanswered questions. When we don't have closure, our subconscious keeps looping back, searching for an explanation. And that's exactly what happens when you use no contact correctly. See, most people make the mistake of thinking that no contact is just about going silent. But silence alone isn't enough. If you simply disappear without creating curiosity, you become forgettable. The real magic happens when your absence raises questions in their mind, when they start wondering what's going on with you, when they feel like they're missing a piece of the puzzle. Curiosity isn't passive, it's active. It gnaws at a person's thoughts. It keeps pulling them back to the same place over and over again, even when they try to move on. And the best part, once curiosity is triggered, it's almost impossible to ignore. The science behind curiosity and obsession. Psychologists call this effect the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency for people to remember and fixate on unfinished or interrupted tasks. If something doesn't have closure, the brain keeps returning to it, searching for completion. This is why we replay conversations in our heads, why we keep checking our phones for a text that never came, why we feel restless when something is left unresolved. When you were constantly available, they had all the answers. They knew where you stood. They didn't have to wonder what you were thinking because you made it clear. But the moment you go silent, the moment you remove yourself from the equation, you create an open loop in their mind, a cliffhanger with no resolution. They start asking themselves, why haven't they reached out? Are they over me? Did they meet someone new? Why do I suddenly care more now that they're gone? And here's the key. The more they think about why you're not there, the more they think about you. The absence alone isn't what drives them crazy. It's the unanswered why. The curiosity keeps them emotionally engaged even if they don't want to be. And the more time they spend thinking about you, the more emotionally invested they become without even realizing it. How to maximize curiosity without saying a word. If you want to stay on someone's mind, you have to give them something to wonder about. Silence is powerful, but strategic silence is even more effective. It's not just about disappearing, it's about making sure that when you do, they notice. 1, disrupt their expectations. People expect patterns. They expect you to act a certain way based on how you've always behaved in the past. If you've always been the one to check in, the one to text first, the one to keep the conversation going, then they assume you'll continue doing so. But the moment you break that pattern, you shock their system. When someone expects a message but doesn't get one, they don't just move on. They notice the silence. They start to wonder why it's happening. They question whether something has changed. And that shift in dynamic puts them on the defensive. Suddenly, they're not in control of the situation anymore. You are. 2, make them search for you. Social media is one of the biggest weapons in the game of curiosity. Most people make the mistake of using it too much. Posting sad quotes, watching their stories obsessively, liking their posts in a desperate attempt to stay on their radar. That's the fastest way to kill curiosity because it gives them all the answers. They don't have to wonder what's going on with you. They can see it. But when you stop watching, when you stop engaging, when you suddenly become unpredictable, that's when the intrigue starts. They'll start checking to see if you're watching. They'll start noticing your silence. Even better, post something unexpected, something that makes them think, wait, what's going on with them? It doesn't have to be dramatic, just different. A new place, a new hobby, a subtle shift in energy. When they can't figure out your next move, when they start questioning what's happening in your life, their investment in you deepens. 3, the power of ambiguity. One of the most overlooked psychological triggers in attraction is ambiguity. People are obsessed with finding answers, with knowing exactly where they stand. But when you remain a mystery, when you leave things open-ended, they have no choice but to keep thinking about you. If they ask mutual friends about you, the response shouldn't be, oh yeah, they're really sad, and still talking about you all the time. That's closure. That tells them they still have a hold over you. Instead, it should be something like, I don't know, they seem different lately. They've been really focused on themselves. That one statement does 2 powerful things. It tells them you're not chasing them. It forces them to wonder what changed. And wondering is the foundation of curiosity. The more they wonder, the more they dwell on you. And the more they dwell on you, the more they start to miss You. 4, keep them guessing. Most people make the mistake of breaking no contact just as it starts working. They get impatient, they want to check if the other person is thinking about them. But the moment you reach out, you give them the closure they were searching for, the curiosity disappears. Instead, let the tension build. Let them feel the absence fully. Let them reach the point where they can't resist checking on you. And when they do, don't respond immediately. Keep your energy neutral. Maintain the mystery. The goal isn't to punish them or play games. It's to make them realize that they don't have full access to you anymore, that they don't own your attention. And that realization alone is enough to trigger an emotional shift in their mind. Because at the end of the day, people want what they can't fully have. And when they're left searching for answers, replaying memories, and wondering what's going on in your world without them, that's when you know you're not just on their mind, you're living there. One of the most powerful forces in human psychology is scarcity. People desire what feels rare, exclusive, or difficult to obtain. The moment something is too available, too accessible, or too predictable, it loses its perceived value. The same principle applies to human relationships. When someone knows they have full access to you, they take you for granted. But when you suddenly remove that access, they feel the loss, and their perception of your value skyrockets. Think about luxury brands. Why do people pay thousands for a designer handbag or a limited edition watch when there are cheaper alternatives? It's not just about quality, it's about exclusivity. The fact that not everyone can have it makes it desirable. The more uncommon something is, the more it's perceived as special. This same psychological principle applies in dating and relationships. If you are always available, always the one to initiate, always the one to chase, then you are sending a subconscious message: I am easy to access. And when something is easy to access, it's taken for granted. When you enforce the no contact rule, you disrupt this pattern entirely. You remove the certainty of your presence. You stop giving them the security of knowing they can reach you anytime. And in doing so, you create a void, an empty space that forces them to reevaluate how much your presence actually meant to them. The law of supply and demand in attraction. Every relationship operates on an unspoken balance of supply and demand. When someone is overly available, their perceived value drops because their presence is in constant supply. But when that presence is suddenly removed, when access is limited, the demand skyrockets. Look at any breakup scenario. The person who begs, pleads, and chases loses all power because they are oversupplying themselves. They're making their attention, emotions, and presence too accessible. On the other hand, the person who withdraws, who holds back, who becomes scarce, they become the one who is pursued. It's the same reason why people suddenly want an ex back when they see them thriving, happy, and unavailable. Scarcity breeds desire. When you step back, when you stop engaging, when you become harder to reach, you send a powerful message. I am not something that can be taken for granted. Wide distance creates value. Human nature is wired to resist loss. Psychologists call this loss aversion, the tendency for people to fear losing something more than they desire gaining something. When you're constantly available, they don't fear losing you. They assume you'll always be there. But when you remove yourself, when you become scarce, their mind starts to panic. What if they're moving on? What if I lost my chance? What if someone else sees their value before I do? These thoughts create urgency, and urgency creates desire. Suddenly, the person who was comfortable knowing you were always there is now faced with the reality that they might not have access to you anymore. And that's the shift, that's the moment they start valuing what they once overlooked. The illusion of permanence versus the power of absence. People take things for granted when they believe they're permanent. When someone assumes they have all the time in the world to reconnect, to fix things, to make a decision, they don't feel the pressure to act. They put things off. But when you introduce scarcity, when you become unpredictable, when you stop being a guaranteed presence, their perspective changes instantly. They no longer see you as a given. They no longer assume you'll always be waiting. And that's when the value shift happens. Absence creates mystery. It makes people question things. It forces them to feel the emptiness of your presence. And the deeper that absence is felt, the more they start to crave you. The paradox of scarcity, less is more. It's counterintuitive, but in attraction, less is always more. The less access someone has to you, the more they crave that access. If you are always texting first, stop. If you are always available to talk, disappear for a while. If you used to initiate conversations on social media, go silent. This isn't about playing games. It's about resetting the dynamic. It's about breaking the cycle of over-availability and rebuilding your value through intentional scarcity. Think about the most desirable people, whether in dating, business, or social circles. They aren't the ones constantly seeking attention. They aren't the ones chasing approval. They are the ones who exude confidence, self-sufficiency, and a sense of purpose that doesn't revolve around someone else's validation. And that's exactly who you need to become. The power of controlled access. Once you've created scarcity, the next step is controlling access to you. This is where most people mess up. They enforce no contact for a little while, but the moment they get a response, they overcompensate. They instantly give back full access. They flood the person with messages, emotions, and attention, undoing all the work they just did. And just like that, the balance shifts back in the other person's favor. Instead, you have to control your presence strategically. When they reach out, don't immediately jump to respond. Keep conversations short, neutral, and leave them wanting more. Maintain an air of mystery and independence. Your goal isn't just to make them miss you, it's to make them realize that they don't get the same version of you they once had. That access to you is earned, not freely given. When they feel like they have to work to regain your attention, their investment in you deepens. Your value is defined by your standards. At the core of all this is one fundamental truth. Your value is determined by the standards you set for yourself. If you let someone treat you like an option, they will. If you remain constantly available, they will assume you have nothing better to do. But the moment you elevate your standards, the moment you demand more without saying a word, the dynamic shifts in your favor. Scarcity isn't about manipulation. It's about self-respect. It's about recognizing that you are the prize. And when you start treating yourself as valuable, rare, and worthy of effort, others will follow suit. Emotions are the driving force behind every decision people make. Logic plays a role, but when it comes to relationships, attachment, and desire, emotions run the show. When you enforce the no-contact rule, you are not just removing yourself physically. You are triggering a shift in the emotional dynamic. Most people enter no contact with a fear-based mindset. They worry, what if they forget about me? What if they move on? What if this backfires? But the truth is, when done correctly, no contact doesn't push them away, it pulls them in. Why? Because it forces an emotional shift. It changes the way they perceive you, it disrupts their attachment patterns, and most importantly, it flips the script on who is emotionally invested. If you are the one feeling desperate for their attention, the one constantly thinking about them, replaying conversations, overanalyzing their actions, then you are the one emotionally hooked. they had the power. But when you step back and shift your focus inward, you change the entire dynamic. Suddenly, they are the ones questioning, wondering, and feeling emotionally unsettled. How no contact rewires their emotional state. Human emotions operate on contrast. People only fully appreciate something when it's taken away. Think about this. When was the last time you truly appreciated breathing? Probably when you had a cold, when your nose was stuffed, and suddenly breathing felt like a luxury. The same thing happens in relationships. When someone is always there, their presence is expected, it's normal, it's taken for granted. But when that presence is removed, when the emotional support, validation, and attention they were used to suddenly disappears, it creates a void. That void triggers an emotional reaction, discomfort, uncertainty, longing. And that's exactly what starts pulling them back. At first, they might not notice. They might assume you're just being quiet for a day or two. But as time passes, their emotions begin to shift. Why haven't they reached out? They always check in. What's different now? Are they really moving on? Why does this feel uncomfortable? Those small thoughts snowball into full-blown emotional turmoil. The more time that passes, the more those emotions intensify. The cycle of emotional withdrawal. The emotional shift you're triggering happens in phases. Confidence and indifference. At first, they assume your silence is temporary. They feel in control, thinking they'll come back like always. Mild confusion and curiosity. As time passes, they start wondering why you're not reaching out. They check their phone more often. They might look at your social media for signs of what's going on. Restlessness and emotional discomfort. Now they start feeling uncomfortable. They're used to your presence and validation, and suddenly it's gone. This creates an emotional imbalance. They don't feel as secure anymore. Panic and urge to reconnect. This is the turning point. They start missing you more than they expected. Their emotions become unsettled, making them more likely to reach out. The more emotionally dependent they were on your presence, even if they didn't show it, the stronger this cycle becomes. Why silence is louder than words. Most people try to reason with emotions. They send long texts, beg for explanations, seek closure. But here's the truth. Emotions don't respond to logic. They respond to feeling. This is why no contact is so powerful. It doesn't rely on words. It lets the emotional shift happen naturally. If you text and chase, they never get to feel the loss. If you try to explain yourself, they don't get the emotional space to miss you. If you remain silent, they are forced to sit with their emotions. And that's where the magic happens. They don't miss the texts themselves. They miss how it felt to have you care, to have you reaching out, to have you present in their life. And the only way to make them feel that loss is to fully remove yourself. Emotional inversion, making them chase you. When you were overinvested, you were the one seeking validation. Your emotions revolved around their responses, their attention, their presence. But when you shift that energy back onto yourself, you trigger emotional inversion, where they become the one seeking validation. The best way to make someone miss you isn't by telling them how much you care. It's by making them feel the absence of your presence. And this only happens when they sense that. You are no longer emotionally dependent on them. You are perfectly fine without their validation. You have taken your energy away and redirected it elsewhere. This creates emotional tension. And tension fuels desire. How to deepen the emotional shift. To truly turn the tables, you need to fully embrace emotional detachment. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop investing your energy into someone who isn't actively choosing you. Here's how to strengthen the shift. Stay off their radar. Stop checking their social media. Stop waiting for a text. The less you engage, the stronger the shift becomes. Channel your energy elsewhere. Focus on things that build your confidence. Get into a new hobby. Work on personal growth. Become someone they regret losing. The more fulfilled you are without them, the more emotionally attractive you become. Don't react if they reach out. If they send a casual text, don't jump at it. Keep your energy neutral. Avoid emotional highs or lows. The goal is to keep them feeling uncertain, wondering if they still have the same effect on you. Maintain an aura of mystery. Post something intriguing, but not directed at them. Be seen living your best life without over-explaining or oversharing. Let their mind fill in the blanks. Curiosity fuels emotional obsession. Why this works? Emotional disruption creates desire. No contact isn't about waiting. It's about creating an emotional disruption. It's about making them feel something they weren't expecting to feel. If they thought they had control, no contact shatters that illusion. If they assumed they could move on easily, the emotional void proves otherwise. If they believe they didn't care anymore, the discomfort of your absence makes them question everything. And that's the turning point. That's when you go from being the one who is chasing to being the one who is being chased. Because at the end of the day, people don't just miss you, they miss the feeling of having you in their life. And when you remove that feeling completely, they're left searching for a way to get it back. The biggest mistake people make during no contact is assuming it's just about waiting. They think if they simply disappear, their absence alone will make someone miss them. But no contact isn't just about making them miss you. It's about making them see you in a way they never did before. It's not about waiting. It's about evolving. If you come back into their life as the exact same person they walked away from, the emotional impact of no contact is wasted. But if during this time you transform into a version of yourself that radiates confidence, purpose, and undeniable value, they won't just miss you, they'll crave to be around you again. Because here's the reality. Attraction is built on perception. People aren't just drawn to others based on memories. They are drawn to who they are now. If you want to stay on their mind constantly, you have to give them something new and intriguing to think about. Why evolution is more powerful than absence. Silence makes them miss you, but transformation makes them regret losing you. They need to see you as someone who has leveled up, someone who has stepped into their power, someone they underestimated. Because when they realize you are no longer the same person they walked away from, their perception shifts. Instead of thinking, I know exactly who they are, they start wondering, what's changed? Why do they seem different? Have I misjudged them? That curiosity, that uncertainty is what keeps them hooked. You don't want them to just miss you. You want them to question themselves. You want them to look at you and think, did I make a mistake? Did I underestimate them? And the only way to make them feel that is by becoming someone who commands their attention effortlessly. The magnetic power of self-improvement. The moment you shift your focus from them to you, something incredible happens. You reclaim all the energy you were once giving away. Instead of seeking validation, you start creating value within yourself. Here's how. Upgrade your mindset. Confidence is magnetic. People are drawn to those who believe in themselves. When you start operating from a place of self-worth, others feel it. Even from a distance. Transform your appearance and presence. Not just physically, but in how you carry yourself. Posture, eye contact, the way you enter a room. These things send a message. When you refine your presence, you shift how people perceive you instantly. Develop an unshakable energy. The most attractive people aren't just good looking. They have an aura of self-assurance. This comes from knowing your value and living your life with purpose. When you radiate certainty and purpose, others feel it without you saying a word. How they start to perceive you differently. When you invest in yourself, when you truly level up, something powerful happens. Instead of being the person who is waiting for their attention, you become the person who seems completely unfazed by their absence. That shift in energy is undeniable. And the moment they sense that they are no longer the center of your world, their entire perspective changes. They go from thinking, they're probably still waiting for me. I can come back whenever I want, to thinking, wait, why do they seem so different? What have they been doing? Have they outgrown me? Am I the one who got left behind? That's the moment when the emotional tables turn. Scarcity plus transformation equals unforgettable. When you combine scarcity, the absence created by no contact, with transformation, the undeniable change in who you are, you create a powerful emotional response. It's one thing to be missed. It's another to be missed with regret. You want them to not just want you back. You want them to feel like they lost something truly special. The people who make the biggest impact aren't the ones who beg to stay. They are the ones who walk away and become someone so extraordinary that losing them feels like a mistake. And the best part, by the time they realize it, you may not even want them back.